One of the other techniques to be able to resolve flickering Miroirian patterns, being able to improve what anti-aliasing has done, is using filtering. Filtering is a technique to be able to compute how the subpixels will be computed into a final pixel value. Let's say we take a pixel that contains 64 subpixels. Then how are you going to take all these 64 and what is basically the math involved to say, okay, all these 64 makes 1? You have to come up with a formula to add. You just do an average, for example. You just do a weighted based on distance. That's basically what is filtering all about. Let's say, for example, box is simply doing a weighted. So this is a pixel being seen from sideways. All the samples within the pixel basically will have the same weight. So a subpixel that is at the edge of the pixel will have the same influence over the final pixel color than the one that is at the middle. So let's say if you set box to 1, then it will only consider the subsamples within the pixel. If you increase box to, let's say, beyond 1, then it will start to consider samples from other neighbor pixels or subpixels. And obviously, because everybody or all the actual subpixel inside this zone has the same influence, obviously it will tend to blur out the pixel. Triangle is a little bit different, where the subpixel located more towards the center of the pixel will have a greater influence, and as the subsample are basically further away from the actual center, then obviously their influence will basically go near 0, even 0. Box can basically start with a minimum value of 1. Triangle requires to have at least 2. So if triangle would be allowed to have 1, then we would lose information, because some of these subpixels here will be totally forgotten and will be basically weighted out to 0. And that will cause information lost. So that's why triangles really start at level 2. So that if you say 2 divided by 2, it means that it will go 1 pixel on one side and 1 pixel on the other side. That means a triangle is basically covering half neighbor pixel by half pixel. So it will still consider neighbor pixel. So considering that real pixel basically will be starting like halfway here, then you could say that the subpixel at the border of the pixel, the actual pixel being rendered, will have a minimum of 50%, and all the samples outside of pixel will go from 50% to 0. So triangle offers a really good quality, or really good balance between a filtered version and also keeping the sharpness and details inside the image. That's really the best, one of the best filtering, and very simple and very efficient. It's very quick to compute this. So box is basically a simple average, where triangle is a simple linear fall off based on distance. Gauss is a little bit different here. Gauss requires a minimum of 3, so the actual pixel cover here is going to be 3 times 2, so 1.5 pixel on one side, 1.5 pixel on the other side. It means that it's really going to start to go over the actual neighbor pixel by 1. So as you could see here, if we say we divide this by 3, so we have 1 right here, like 1, 2, 3, we could pretty much say that the pixel being rendered will have pretty much a flat contribution, almost like a box, and that is the reason why Gauss is blurring so much. So if you really want to get away from this CG look and have this very smooth render, no sharpness at all, Gauss is really perfect for this. Midshell here is a little bit different. Midshell has a curve here that kind of undercompensates. So instead of adding the influence, it is going to subtract influence. Midshell and Lanczos, because they have this tendencies to go underneath, will actually start to sharpen the image. So it is really to be used with care. So Midshell and Lanczos are really a good filtering. I personally prefer Midshell because it filters, it sharpens less than Lanczos. And also in terms of rendering time, the rendering factor whenever you use these things are obviously increasing, because box is very simple. It's a simple average, very fast to compute. When you get to Midshell and Lanczos, it's a very complex function that needs to be evaluated. So obviously this will cost a little bit more time and more CPU is going to be used to be able to compute this. The actual final impact on render time, we're not talking about 10-15%, but we're talking really about matter of probably 0.5% or to 1%. So it's quite minimal. So you should be able to use this without having to worry about the actual rendering time, because the impact is quite minimal.